Antonio's Story, Legacy of the Fallen, by Charles Olson. Chapter 20. No Turning Back. Antonio woke to a sharp, pounding headache, the relentless aftermath of a night lost to tequila shots and pulsing music. The dim light seeping through the threadbare curtains stung his eyes, prompting him to squint and turn his face into the pillow, a pillow scented by a perfume he didn't recognize. Slowly, he propped himself up on one elbow, scanning the unfamiliar room. Beside him lay a woman whose face he didn't remember, tangled in sheets, breathing softly. Quietly, Antonio eased himself out of bed, stepping carefully to avoid scattered clothing. He dressed hurriedly, grabbing his shoes as he slipped out the door. Across town, Mono stirred in a dirty alley, his back aching from sleeping slumped against the rough brick wall. The sunlight pierced his vision, stabbing into his brain. Groaning softly, he rubbed his temples, confused and disoriented. Garbage and broken bottles surrounded him, and a stray dog sniffed cautiously nearby before trotting away. Mono rose unsteadily, dusting himself off and trying to piece together the missing hours from the night before. His head spinning, he stumbled toward the street, unsure where he was. Half an hour later, they met at El Tragadero, a modest diner located in downtown Juárez. The place was a shrine to bullfighting, walls adorned with posters and framed photos of matadors, and an imposing mounted bull's head watching over the patrons from above the counter. They sat at a small table near the counter, directly beneath the bull's stoic gaze. The owner, Don Arturo, was a retired bullfighter whose legendary career in Mexico City still drew respect from those who remembered his fearless performances. He sat quietly behind the counter polishing glasses, occasionally glancing proudly at the photos of his younger days in the ring. His daughter, Sofia, a strikingly beautiful woman with captivating eyes and an easy laugh, approached their table, her warm eyes lingering briefly on Mono. They ordered huevos rancheros, steaming tortillas, spicy chorizo, and fresh salsa. Antonio took a bite, and the first taste sent a jolt of life through him. "This might be the best thing I've ever eaten," he muttered, savoring the perfectly seasoned eggs and smoky chorizo. Mono nodded in agreement, scooping salsa onto a tortilla. "Tastes like something my grandmother used to make," Mono said quietly, memories of his childhood flickering behind his eyes. Every Sunday morning, no matter how tough the week had been, she always made breakfast feel like a celebration. Antonio smiled faintly. "It's strange. This food reminds me of the first meal I had after leaving Panama. Simple but unforgettable." Their hangovers gradually faded with each bite, replaced by a warm, comforting satisfaction. Sofia returned with more coffee, her eyes sparkling as she smiled at Mono. Mono leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "So, Sofia," he said with a half-smile, "if the food's this good, I can only imagine what dinner would be like with company like you." She laughed, a genuine sound that made Mono's chest tighten unexpectedly. "Careful," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You keep talking like that and I'll have to make you prove it tonight." Her eyes lingered on his a beat too long before she walked away, hips swaying gently. Mono watched her go, heart thudding, the brief connection sparking something unfamiliar and warm inside him. "If you come back later, I'll make sure you have something special for dinner," she said softly when she returned, leaving Mono smiling, his spirits lifted by the promise, his heart beating a bit faster. After paying, they returned to their room at Hotel Correo, a shabby two-star establishment on Avenida Lerdo. The room cost them around 120 pesos, roughly equivalent to $12, and it looked every bit worth that modest price. The narrow hallway leading to their room was dimly lit, tiles cracked and walls chipped. Inside, a musty damp odor hung in the air, the mattress springs groaned with even the slightest shift, and deep scratch marks marred the bedroom wall, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. In the bathroom, the stink of raw sewage lingered faintly beneath the scent of harsh disinfectant. It was the kind of place that made you want to sleep with one eye open, and it delivered everything you'd expect for 120 pesos. Rigo Vega. The warehouse office felt colder this time. A cheap desk lamp buzzed in the corner, casting a flickering circle of light across scratched plywood and shadows that stretched too far. Antonio and Mono stood across from El Chivo, their shoulders squared, their eyes sharp. There was no grin tonight. "You passed the warm-up," Chivo said flatly. "Now let's see if you bleed." He slid a photo across the desk. The man in the image was maybe early 30s, thin, half-shaved face, eyes twitchy and uncertain. His name was scrawled on the back, Rigo Vega. "He's skimming from the wrong people," Chivo said. "Took something that doesn't belong to him. You're gonna get it back." Antonio picked up the photo. "Where is he?" Chivo didn't hesitate. "Tienda in Colonia Altavista. He runs out the back around midnight. Carries a pistol, but he's not a fighter." Mono nodded, adjusting the pistol tucked into the back of his jeans. "What are we grabbing?" Chivo's eyes flashed. "A phone," he said. "That's it. He's got one of ours. GPS tagged. You find it, you bring it." He paused. "If he resists—" A beat. "Make it loud." Colonia Altavista slept like a cornered animal. The windows were all shut, steel bars welded into their frames. The only noise came from stray dogs, barking into the silence like they were warning the walls themselves. Antonio and Mono moved through the alleys like ghosts. They reached a side wall of a small convenience store, barely lit from within. Through the cracked window, they spotted him. Rigo Vega. Alone. Behind the counter. An earbud in. Head down. "He leaves through the back at midnight," Antonio whispered. "We wait." At 12:04 a.m., the back door creaked open. Rigo stepped out cautiously, locking it behind him. A cheap backpack hung over one shoulder. One earbud still in, head low. "Evening," Antonio said softly, stepping from the shadows. Rigo jerked. "Who the hell—" Mono appeared behind him, gun already out. "Don't move." Rigo froze. His eyes darted. "You're Chivo's boys, huh?" "Give us the phone," Antonio said. "I don't have it," Rigo replied. "Too fast." Antonio stepped forward. No anger, no threats, just steady calm. "Don't lie," he said. "We're not the polite kind." Rigo started shaking. Okay, backpack." He tossed it forward. Mono caught it and unzipped it in one motion. There it was, a burner phone, screen still lit, battery low. Mono gave a sharp nod. "Got it." Then, a gunshot. Rigo's hand had flown to his waistband. He pulled a pistol and fired blindly. Mono shouted and dove for cover. The shot grazed Antonio's upper arm, a white-hot sting that blurred his vision for a second. Antonio didn't flinch. He drew his pistol and fired once. Center mass. Rigo crumpled instantly, gasping for air, blood spreading across his shirt like spilled paint. Antonio stood over him, chest heaving. "You should have just handed it over," he said. Back at the warehouse, the adrenaline had worn off. Antonio sat in the corner, his arm bleeding from the open wound, his jaw tight. Mono stood near the desk, retelling the night to El Chivo, who paced slowly like a judge weighing a verdict. When Mono finished, Chivo said nothing for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "You got the phone. You didn't flinch." He walked to the desk, picked up a thicker envelope, fatter than the last, and tossed it between them. "Now people are going to start knowing your names." He poured himself a drink, swirled it once. "Juárez doesn't reward the cautious," he said. "It rewards the ones who show up, handle business, and don't ask dumb questions." Antonio met his eyes. "We're not here to ask questions." Chivo grinned. "Good," he said. "Then maybe you're ready for the next step." Afterthoughts. Back in their room afterward, Mono carefully examined Antonio's injury. He pulled a clean t-shirt from their backpack, tearing strips to create makeshift bandages. "You're lucky it's just a graze," Mono murmured, securing the fabric tightly around Antonio's arm. "Could have been worse." Antonio's eyes were distant, detached. "It's just part of the job," he said softly. Mono watched him carefully, unease flickering across his features. Afterwards, they returned to El Tragadero, drawn back by the memory of their earlier meal and Sofia's invitation. Over plates of food nearly as good as the first, Mono hesitated before finally addressing what weighed heavily on him. "Antonio, does it bother you? What happened tonight? Killing someone?" Antonio stared at his plate for a long moment before shaking his head slowly. "No, it doesn't." Mono shifted uncomfortably, surprised by Antonio's cold resolve. "Not even a little." Antonio met Mono's gaze steadily. "He chose this life. So did we." Mono exhaled slowly, accepting the truth behind Antonio's words, even as a small chill ran down his spine. But something twisted inside him. The killing haunted him. Not because it was unjustified, but because it had been so easy. He wondered whether he could have done it himself if the roles had been reversed. The thought made his stomach turn. He didn't like the violence, but he understood it. In Juárez, survival demanded a hard edge. What scared him most was the look in Antonio's eyes, not shaken, not remorseful, but eerily calm. As if, deep down, Antonio might actually like it. He knew that between the two of them, one needed to remain unafraid. Resigned, yet determined, he nodded once. "Then we keep moving forward." Antonio pushed his empty plate away, his eyes calm and untroubled. "Exactly." Mono glanced toward Sofia, who smiled warmly from behind the counter. For a moment, he allowed himself the luxury of hope, unaware of how fleeting their connection would soon prove to be.